Hello everyone, I'm back. This is a follow-up video to the video I did last week on Nuxt Ionic. And at the end of that video, I deployed this app that you see to the phone. I showed the camera integration. But one of the cool things about Ionic also supports PWA. And so currently now when I attempt to use a camera, it's failing because it doesn't have a camera. But using the Ionic capacitor camera component with the PWA elements, it allows us to get access to the camera from the web browser. And so that's what we're going to show in the first part of this video. And then depending upon how much time I have, kind of like the goal, where I'm trying to go is we will integrate Prisma into Nuxt. We will then connect our PWA or our website or our Nuxt application using Nuxt server APIs to be able to read and write objects into we're just going to use SQLite with Prisma today, into that database. And then in the end, we are going to take the server component of Nuxt and we will run that. And then we will do configuration, specify the IP address for the API, and then we will build a mobile application using Nuxt Capacitor and Ionic, and we will deploy that application onto the phone, and that application will interact with our Nuxt server through the API endpoints that we created. So in the end, the objective here is to create a full stack mobile application using Nuxt 3 with Ionic. So that's what we're going to try to get through. I don't know if I'm going to get through it all in this video. I don't like to make my videos longer than approximately 30 minutes. But this might end up being a long one because we're trying to cover a lot. So first thing, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Please make sure you share this stuff with your friends and family. And hopefully you find this video enjoyable, I was about to say, enjoying and helpful in whatever way matters most to you. All right, let's get to the code. All right, so what we're trying to do is actually get this camera to work inside my PWA. And what Ionic Capacitor has, if you look at the bottom, you scroll down through the camera and you scroll down here to a section called PWA notes. PWA elements are required for Camera Plugin to work. So if we click on PWA elements, you can see what it's going to do is it's going to bring up this neat little UI, and it's going to leverage whatever the webcam is you have on your device to allow you to take photos. Normally we install it to npm, then we add this bunch of code, but we can get around that by just adding this script tag to the head of our home page. And so that's the approach we're going to take. So we're going to come in here on our home page, and underneath the define page meta, I'm going to say use head, and we're not going to use title, we're going to use script. And as you can see, it looks like it's an array. So we're going to put the array in there, and I already have the string. So let's save this, give it a run, and see if this solves our problem. Okay, let me get my app going again. And now it has my camera in here, allow localhost use your camera. I'm going to say allow. What this picker will do will give access to the, actually I don't know if it's going to be able to give me, oh actually it did, it just used my other camera, not my primary camera that I'm using. So it gives us access to the camera for you to take a picture. Also gives you access here to kind of your normal image picker, but we're just going to take a regular picture, and there you go. So now you have your camera working in your PWA. So that's what I wanted to cover in this first part, because the next part, as I said, we're going to integrate Prisma. We are going to connect it to a SQLite database. We are going to use the server API, and we'll create a route for adding what we're going to call image posts and getting a list of all the image posts out of our SQLite database. And what we're going to do is we want to save this image inside of an image post. So we needed to get this working in the browser initially so that I don't have to do a bunch of testing on device. So that's why the first part was just getting our camera to work inside of a browser. So now let's kind of hop over to, so for those who already have Prisma all figured out, you can kind of skip this next section because this next section is just going to be about getting Prisma installed inside of our Nuxt project. So that's what we're going to cover next. Okay, so now let's get to installing Prisma. I'm going to kind of step through this set up Prisma, start from scratch from the Prisma IO database. Also, the blog post I have is going to have these steps kind of broken out a little bit more clearly for you. And so you can kind of reference that also as we go along here. So let's open up another terminal window here, and let's just follow along with the steps. For some of y'all, you might be saying I'm going really slow, but for what we're doing here, I think slow and steady is okay. And like I said, you can always fast forward past a bunch of this stuff. So first let's accept all my cookies. Accept all cookies. Let's go back to installation. And we are going to just install all this stuff here. Did I get it? Let's copy it. To get Prisma installed and make sure we have Node and TypeScript installed. And then the next thing that we're going to do, just to save us time later, we will install the Prisma client. And so we get that installed. And then the next thing is we're going to do is we're going to kind of initialize. Let me just paste this command in here. And what we're doing is, let's give us some more room here. This is, we're initializing Prisma on this project, and we're saying our data source that we're going to use is SQLite. And so that's what's happening now. And then it kind of tells us what the next steps are that we need to do here. If your database has no tables yet, we're going to read getting started, which we're going to do next, and we're going to kind of create a schema to get everything set up there, and then we'll run Prisma generate to set up the client just like it says right here. So that's kind of what our next steps are. So let's take a look and see what happened here. Let's open this up. We have our .env file. So one thing that we're going to do is I'm not going to use this .env file because it's going to cause problems later. So I think the documentation says the .env file is not read in production. So it's usually not a good idea to leave stuff there. I need to dig a little bit more into kind of what's the best practice around that. But what I'm just going to do for now is I'm going to move this. I'm just going to take this out directly and put it inside of my Prisma file. So you see here inside my Prisma schema, it has this. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say .env, and I'm going to take this out. Well, I'm not going to take it out. I'm going to copy it from here, and I'm just going to place it here. And I'm not worried because there's folks in the community who watch my videos, and they will give me a comment on what is the best practice. So I look forward to that, and then I'll update everything based on that feedback. So now this is basically saying it's going to create a database in this specific directory, and that it's focused on using SQLite. And the provider is the Prisma client. So we've got that resolved. And then, like I said, I'm trying to follow along with what's here in this documentation so that if you don't like the way I'm explaining it or the way I've written down, you can also go back to this documentation for a reference. All right, so then the next part is connecting your database. And we've just covered that. We've set up the database URL. And so this is pretty straightforward with SQLite. So we can scroll down past all this. And then using Prisma migrate. So we need to set up our schema. And so here's our schema file. I've already have my schema written up. So what I'm just going to do is I will kind of paste in what the schema is, and then I'll kind of walk through why it is the way it is. It's a pretty, it is a pretty simple schema. So I'm creating this object called image post. It has a default ID that'll get auto incremented. I set a create time and an update time. I have a title. I have some content, which is like a description, and I'm storing the string as a base 64 string. So that's what this image is, and then I just have a flag on whether or not the image is published. So this is basically what my schema is right now. And so that's what we're following along here, how you create your schema. And then the way you get what's in your schema to map your data model to the database schema, you need to use a Prisma migrate CLI command. And so that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to come down here in the bottom, and we're just going to copy exactly what they say here. And so we created a migrate, and it updated Oh, there's a major update. Please follow the guide. This is a major update. Please follow the guide. So since this is a major update, and I am not sure if it's going to cause problems with my demo, I'm just going to ignore this major update for now. We're just going to keep pushing forward. The other cool thing that we can do now is I should be able to run Prisma Studio. And so now Prisma Studio launched. It is a UI that, for those who aren't familiar, it's a UI that can allows you to kind of create records and manage records and see kind of what's going on in your database. So I can add a dummy record here, title, dummy with no image. The content is, this is the content for the dummy with no image. Let's change that to UMMM. And then I can save my change. And so now I have a record in my database. And so this is kind of cool. It's a nice utility that you can use to kind of test things. So let's kind of move this back out of the side and keep kind of marching forward with our work. All right, so now the next step is we've already installed a client. So we'll move past that. And then next they say is creating the database. So to create a database, we need to set up our client. And so what I'm going to do, let's kind of move this. Where's a good place for my head? Let's move my head over here for now. What I'm going to do is, I don't have my server directory yet. So let's create our server directory. And it doesn't belong inside of Prisma. It belongs at the top level. So let's put it back to top level. And then in my server directory, we know we're gonna need an API directory later, so let's just create that directory, but UT, and then drop that into just server. And then inside of here, what we'll do is we'll create our Prisma client, and this will be kind of like the general place that'll hold it to give other people access to it. And it's pretty straightforward what goes inside of our Prisma client. So following on what they have here, we have our Prisma client. We're going to create we're going to create a new Prisma client, and we're going to export that from utils so that you can have access to it. So that's our client. And then they jump right into doing queries, so let's jump right into it also. So what we need to do is we need an endpoint. And so we're going to create an endpoint here. And we're going to call this, I think we called it get all posts.ts. And this is what we're going to use to get all the image posts. And we're going to use very similar code to this, which I apologize might be hard to read, but we're just going to use our Prisma. And actually, let's just show how it works. Let's just show how straightforward it is, since we have the ability to use Prisma and the Prisma client and the type safe stuff we get out of it. And also, let's just add, just as a reference, also Nuxt server. More about the Nitro server engine, API routes. This is what we're really focusing on here. Server routes. So it took me a while to get here, but this is our basic server routes. Kind of, let's just copy this to get us going. So we copy the server route. It's pretty cool. And then we can return some cool stuff. I was about to say a bad word. We can return some cool stuff from here. And what we want to do inside of here is, let's kind of get this out of here. We want to get access to our client and make our API call and return the results. And out of utils, I'll get my client, and then out of my client, I'll make my API call. It's complaining because this needs to be async, so let's add our async up here. And then this will make our database call, and it will just return everything. And we'll manage this on the client side. But I think, let's see if we can actually just test this straight up now. So, is my server still running? Let's stop this and fire it up again. Okay, so we have localhost 3001. So now let's try, I'm going to take this route. So we'll take our localhost 3001 API / get all hosts. It should get one, and it did. So it got that dummy post that I added initially. So we know that endpoint is working. And so now that we're here, let's kind of add our next post. Our next server endpoint, and we'll just copy this since it's going to be so similar. Actually, no, we won't copy that. So let's go back in here. We're going to create a new file, import, and we'll call this create post. And we'll follow some of the same pattern from here. We'll get our DB client, we'll define our event handler, and then we will use the Prisma client to make an API call. Let's go to create post. We're going to move this. What we want to do here is a couple of things. First, we need to get the body, which is the information that's going to get passed to us. So we can do that with the get body call off of the event, and that'll give us the parameters that got passed into us. And so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a post. We're getting to do the create, you need to pass in the data, and we're going to get our body, our title, and our image we're going to get our title, our content, and our image off of the body that gets passed into this function. And I think, let me see if I can just demo this without building a UI also to my Thunder client. Let me get everything I need. I haven't used Thunder in a while. Actually, I haven't used it in a demo ever, so let's see what happens. Let's say, all right, so we're going to say new request, and we want to do a post. First, let's just test our get on it. So we'll test our get, and we'll take the same URL, copy, paste, and we see it got us our data back. By the way, this Thunder client's pretty cool. I'll embed the link in the video. So that's our get. Now let's change this and let's do a post. And our API, we call it create post. And let's see. I think we want to pass a header. Content type. Application JSON, and then we're going to go to the body, and it's JSON, and so we know that it needs a title, content, and image. So we're over here now. Title using Thunder client. Content, just content, ent, image string. Okay, and then let's see what happens when we do a send. And so we did a send, and we can look down here at our response. And for our response, it showed that it added. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Response, you can see that it added a record to the database. And then the last thing to do to kind of verify, let's go back over here. Let's run Prisma Studio. And you can see we now have two records. So we have the other record we added with the Thunder client. Right, so we know our API routes are working. Let's kind of shrink this back down. And so for the next part, what we need to do is, let's get out of my Thunder client also. So for the next part, what we want to do is we need to go back to, so now we've done our server. Now we need to go back to the front end of our application, which is primarily our home page we'll focus on, and provide access to our API calls so that when we take a picture with this camera, we have the ability to save that image along with a title and some content and send it to the back end. And then also be able to implement this other API call, which is this get all posts, so we can just render a list of images here. All right, so that's what we're going to do in the next part. Okay, like I said, now we're going to focus on the front end. So let's go back to our home page, and let's start to move some things around here to get it the way that we really want it to be. All right, so we don't need our next button anymore. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to move our camera button back up to the top corner here. And so we're just going to replace this logout button here. We're going to take all our code here from this button, and we're going to put it up here in the top. And so now we have our camera up there in the top corner. And we have some more space here. Let's get, let's clean this up a bit. We don't. And actually, you want to know what? Let's just make this our title. It'll give us all of our space down there for our list. So we're going to take this out. We're going to put it up here on our title and clean this out completely. So now we're going to have all this space. I don't know if it'll get, well, hopefully that gets cleaned up and looks better on device. But this is the direction we're going. Well, let's get mobile out there. Let's just say app because it's on the device, so you know it's an app. Okay. So inside of here is where we want to create our list, because we're going to, so right now we're not doing anything in here, we're just making this call for the camera, but what we want to do inside of here, and let's go back to our Nuxt documentation, so they talk about the server routes and all this other stuff, but let's take a look at, we're going to use delay, sync, fetch, is that what I want, F-E-T-C-H. Let's just do fetch and see what we get from there. We'll do data fetching. Okay, so we are going to query some data from the back end, and all these, this is lazy. I think we're going with use async data. And they talk about what the difference between the two are and all the other stuff. I'll leave that exercise to reader, but what we're going to do is, that's the API call we're going to make. And so inside of our script code, so we have our use head. We set up some local variables. Let's do right here. Load the data. And I'm going to close this for now since we don't need it to give us some more space for kind of the code. And we're going to copy some code and talk about what we got. So let's add. Also, so I created a type for my image post array. I'm trying to be a good type person, so I'm trying to create types more often. So hopefully it'll just become a normal practice for me, and I won't have to kind of think twice about doing it. So that's kind of what's going on now. So we'll go up at the top for our setup here. Now we'll go right here, and we'll put some types. And so this is the type for my image post, which I covered before. And then this is an image post array, which is what we hope to get back from our fetch. And so that addresses that issue. And then this API URL. So the idea is, because remember I mentioned before, we're going to have a different path when we're running locally like we are now testing versus when we're running on device. And so what happens is I'm setting up this URL inside of my React. I was about to say React. My apologies. I'm setting this URL up inside of my Nuxt config. In my runtime config. So let's go over there right now and get that set. So my Nuxt config, and then inside of here, I can set some runtime information. So let's see. All right, so now that we have that pasted in here, and as you can see, this is where your server IP address will go for when you're doing remote work, and where I'm getting mine from. Well, my server stopped right now, but if I stop that and run my server again, it's telling me What's it complaining about? Unexpected token. Oh, it doesn't like this. So let me just do this. Let's get this going again. So this is my external address right here. This is the IP address that I want to use. So I'm going to put that in here. So when I'm running on device, that will be my production. But when I'm running locally, my path that I just want to use is /API. Okay, so let's go back to my home page. And that's where this value is coming from. And that's the value that I'm using inside of my fetch. And then these are kind of different. So my error, my pending state while it's loading, and the data that I actually want to use. I'm going to use a refresh later so I can execute this query again after I post a new image, and so we'll use that later. The error we'll use to display errors. Pending, let's add some UI around pending. So Ionic has this component called loading, which will just kind of just give us this little like spinning thing. So what we'll do is we'll just add it up here at the top. And so what's happening while the state pending is true, this dialog will be this component will be considered as open. So you'll see this kind of loading appear, and then when pending's gone, it will disappear. So that's kind of cool how we can just manage it using these reactive variables that we're kind of getting back from here. Data is clearly what we want to load. So since it's defined here inside of our setup, it'll be exported. And since it'll be exported, that means we have access to it inside of the template. And as you know, a lot of the template stuff is really just UI candy. And so it's going to be a lot of, let's comment this out because we're going to use this later. It's going to be a lot of Ionic stuff. So let's just put this there. List view of data. And I'm just going to paste this in also, and then I'll kind of explain what I'm doing there. And let's kind of explain what we have going on here for folks who aren't familiar with Ionic. Actually, you can already see it. It's already kind of rendered the cards. And so what we have here is data. Here is what is coming back from this fetch. And then we're going to loop through each one of the items, and the items are the post. And then we're going to render the title. We're going to render the content. And then if we have an image or any value in that image, we're going to pass to this Ionic image component, and we're going to attempt to render it. So this one had nothing, so that's why you don't see anything. This one, I think I put a blank screen, so it's trying to actually draw the image that was associated with it. So that's what our list of data looks like. So we quickly have our list of data up here. So that's pretty awesome. And so the next step is to connect the camera. Well, the camera's already connected, but what we want to do is we want to create a UI that allows you to not only capture the image on your camera, but to also enter text for the content in the title. And we want to trigger that all off this same button. So we're going to have to add some more functionality under this do camera button. The kind of do camera is just part of the process, and so probably want to start off by let's create the additional component first and kind of step through it. So what we want to do is we want to create a modal dialog, modal for data input. So Ionic has a modal component, and we're going to leverage that modal component to kind of show a UI. So once again, I got some code. We'll paste it to code. We'll kind of talk through what's happening, and we'll learn a little bit of this together. And I'm going to put that in a separate component. So let's go pages. I'm going to put my component folder inside here, components, and then I'm going to create a component. And I'm going to call it image post input.view. Okay, and this will be a regular view component. So let's start with our Ion modal. And then we're going to have content inside of our Ion modal. So Ion. So why am I using these? Let's try to stay consistent. Yeah, I guess that's what I used there. So yeah, Ion modal. Ion, I-O-N, modal. And then inside of our Ion modal, we are going to have Ion content. I'm going to just type out some of this initially, and then I'll bring in all the style stuff later. So clearly we're going to need to close our modal, and then we also need to submit our modal. So let's copy this. And then it's close. We'll just call this, actually this would be cancel. And this will be save. And we'll just call this submit. And we're going to do this color danger. So you know to close it, we need to have our functions down here. So let's kind of just put some placeholders. Const submit and const close modal. And so we'll have those two. So that saves that. And I know this because I've written this already. We kind of want our buttons to kind of slide off to the right. So we'll just put a little wrapper around them. Oh, I forgot my content. There you go. All right. Let's put a header and a toolbar inside of our modal also. Sorry, I was using the camel case here. Let's fix this. Ion GADER. Let's fix that. Toolbar. Fix that one. Oh, that's spelled wrong. Ion, I-O-N. And then let's fix this one. ion.title. All right. So now, but I need this thing to be able to close easily. So there's an is open. I don't know why I'm not getting my little helpers here. I'll have to take a look at that. So is open, and we're going to set this based on a specific property called show image. Show image post. So whenever this property is true, we're going to show it. Whenever it's false, we're going to hide it. So that's kind of the strategy that we're going to take. And then we also need to handle another event because these dialogues can be closed by a person clicking outside the window. So I'm going to say v on. And then we need to listen to an event, and that event is Ion modal did dismiss. M-I-S-S. All right. And so when this event is triggered, we want to call a handler, and that handler in this case is going to be our close. Our close modal. Let's close this to get some more space. In our close modal, we're going to emit an event, and the event handler will set this property to false because this is going to be a property that gets passed in. So let me go back to my home page to show the kind of trick of what we're going to try and do. So in here, we need to put our modal, and I called it an input. No, I call it this image post input. We know at a minimum we need to show, well, let's stick with our image post post input. And we know that we have a property called show image post input. And so we'll just we'll keep it simple, we'll just say show modal. That'll be our local property, and then we'll go down here. And here, we'll just say const show modal, set the ref to false. And then what will happen is, let's change our, just to test this for now, we'll just say show modal equals true. All right, so let's go there. Oh, there's an error. Show image post input. Oh, I forgot. We need to go in here and we need to define our properties on our. We need to define our properties that exist on our component. So let's put those in now. So we'll put them right up here at the top also. So this is our image post input property. And then also we're going to pass the image from the camera in so that you can see it in the modal as you're entering the rest of the information. Let's kind of save that now and see if we can get our modal to show. So there's our modal showing. And then our cancel, which will get called when we click close modal, which I didn't do anything on. But what we want this guy to do, we want it to emit I think we can emit a image post cancel event. So we want to handle the two, or image closed. Now let's be specific. It's a cancel, so let's call this cancel modal. And then go down here and call this cancel modal. And then let's create some events that we want to emit. And I already have that kind of typed up too, so let's just copy that over. So those are the properties. Now these are the events that this component will emit. And it's going to emit this image post cancel event. And that'll let us know that we want to close our modal and we don't want to save anything. And then in here, image post cancel. So that's what we want to do. And so then we need someone on the other side, in our home page, to kind of handle this event. Let's kind of make some room here. And so here we need to handle that image post cancel event. And when we'll do that is we'll say image post cancel. And for this, since we're not doing anything else, this is correct. All we really need to do is just set show modal to false tab. And what we'll do for save also, we'll do the same thing for save just for now. All right. So in both of these scenarios, all we're doing is setting show modal to false, which will close the modal. So let's refresh. We have our thing. We click to take a picture, our modal comes up, we cancel, it closes the modal. Oh, I didn't connect save. Let's go back and connect save in our image post input. Submit. But the difference will be that on submit, you can see I've already specified we're going to pass back a title and some content. So let's put that in here. Actually, let's create our placeholders for that. Not our placeholders, but kind of our component that's going to manage all of that. And so what we want to do is we want to create a local, we're going to create a local reference that holds title and content, and that's going to be what we pass back. So here we have our properties, then we have our emits, and then here's kind of our local state or local information we're saving. And then what we're going to do here is, on success, we're going to pass back title equals data value title, content equals data value content. And this should be image post submit. Sub, I suppose. Sub. Yes. So that's what we want there. So on submit button, I'm going to take whatever data got entered in here and I'm going to pass it back, and I'll use that to save. And on cancel, I just want to emit post cancel and shut it down. So now let's add the UI to kind of capture these values so we can kind of show how this is all going to work. And I've already kind of created that. So we'll go right up here, and above this is where we kind of want our fields to be. Our input fields, let's see what they look like. So this is going to be our title and our content, and then save. The last thing we want to do is we want to kind of show the image from our camera too. The cleanest way to do it is to actually pass in the image URL. So let's add that. Did I have? Yeah. See, because I need to pass in this image URL as one of the properties. So let's go back to our home page. And right now, I'm just passing in this property to whether to show it. My event handler, the last thing I'm missing is my image URL. How did I spell this thing? Image URL equals, and I believe I already have an image URL. So this will pass in the image to our modal. So I think, let's see if we can kind of connect this right to the camera right now also. So what we want is that when I click this button, I want to do this handle create post. And then what we'll do in handle create post, let's go down here, is let's look inside of our code. We're going to change this to handle create post. And then we have to do something a little bit different now because we don't want a regular URL. We kind of want a data. We want this return base64 string. And so the image URL value will no longer be an image path. So this is going to have to be, we want to construct this so that it will render properly inside of a web view. So the way to do that is to kind of set up the structure of what a base64 string is going to look like. So we're going to take the format that comes back from this call and use it for the format, and then we're going to take the base64 string and put this all together, and that should give us a nice image. And then the last thing we want to do here is, if everything's good, we want to set show modal to true. And so that will render the modal. It should get the image URL value, and we should see it appear. So let's give it a try. I don't know why it's using the, because since I'm using this camera here for the video, it's using the camera from my other computer. So let's give this a try. And why didn't my modal show? Sure, let's quickly just do this. Why is it going to always allow? Is it like always going to ask me this question? Take a picture. I'll open up this. Let's cancel this. Let's take a picture. All right, so we have our image kind of appearing here. Now all we need is to set our title and our content. So let's cancel this. And what we're going to do is, so we need to add our event handlers on. Right now we're just doing a show modal post, but on here we want to handle our success. So on success, so handle input submit, and then let's create a function down here. I mean, this is right. We want to set our show modal to false. Console log that. And then we have our input that's going to be coming from here, and this should be title, content, and we already have the image URL. So let's just kind of, let's just set a breakpoint here, so we can make sure we're getting what we expect to get. Success, testing on Chrome. Yes, this worked. Save. We come in, we get our title, we get our content, and we already have our image value. So I think now we are ready to actually save this to the database and see what we get. Let's move Chrome out of the way. Let's let this finish up. Let's move Chrome out of the way. And let's use our last API call, and then I think we're close to kind of wrapping this up other than showing deployment. So we're going to go into our home post. Once we get our handle submit, we'll use our last API call. Handle input submit event. And our last API call, we will use this server route, this final server route called create posts. And we want to do a couple of things. Is A, we want to set our value to be false. We're going to create another property called saving, and we're going to set that value to true, and that's going to be another indicator. So we'll set the value to true. And then, excuse me, we're going to make this fetch call. I'm just going to kind of paste it. So we just pasted in this code, and let's clean this up a bit so we can get rid of these errors. This is going to be async. Oh, I know what's wrong. I'm just doing a regular fetch instead of this use async data. So I'm not getting back the information that I really want back. So let's switch this so that we can do that. So we're going to change this here to our pending save. We don't need the refresh. And we will just replace this fetch here with, we'll change this to post. And then we're going to pass in the rest of the body and also the information here. So let's just copy all this down to here, and I'll cut it so you can see it's all gone. And then we're going to put it inside of here. And then let's delete this old one. All right. Oh, I know. My pending save, I don't know what I was thinking, sorry. My pending here is caught inside the scope of this function, so what I need to do, so we'll do pending here, and I'll just go back to the approach that I was going to take originally, which was this, just create another ref. Call it pending save. That's what we will use up here inside of my template. And then we'll just go down here, and what we'll do is, actually, I don't know how to connect that, so let's just make it simple. And I'm just going to do this. Pending save value is true. And then at the end here, after everything's done, pending save dot value is false. And then just to make sure that, yeah, that's our happy path. Let's just test our happy path before we start putting new stuff in. So let's refresh all this. Let's give this a try. It's like our camera. We're going to allow. Going to take our photo. Testing db save. Here is some content. Save. I got some strange error down here. It didn't write. Let me check my data. So API URL. Oh, that is not the name of my path. My name of my path is actually create post. Okay, let's give this a try again. And it added our new content. So we have the thing working and saving. Well, let's make sure our cancel works. And so we save nothing there. Let's make sure the cancel works this way. All right, so we're getting the appropriate behavior, and our images are getting saved. So what's next? What's next is to actually deploy this thing onto a phone and show us adding photos connected to our Nuxt backend. So that's what we're going to do in the next section. All right, we're at the last part. And so the last part is to get this thing over to a device. So a couple of things is if you're looking at capacitor documentation, there's permissions you need to set on iOS and Android to get your cameras to run appropriately. And so what you can see is I've already added it here on Android. Inside of the manifest, I've added these two permissions. And then if we go over to iOS and look inside of our app info plist, I've added these camera usage description, photo library usage description, and photo library add usage description. So I've added them here in both of the files. Once again, all the source code will be posted so you can check it out yourself. So the other thing to do is let's verify our, so let's close my plist. Let's verify our, where is it? Our Nuxt configuration. And so we need to make sure that this URL matches the URL that our server is being run on, and that we have the appropriate API path. So let's close this out. Let's run this again. We see that it is running on this 192.168.156.3001. So first let's do a little check, which I've already done over here for you to see. This is the IP address. We might run into some problems with this big data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back inside my code just to make sure this thing doesn't choke on the big string. And we're going to go to our image and we're going to say we're going to drop, well, let's leave our quality at 90, but we can set some parameters to try to get a smaller image. And I believe the way that it works is if I set 1, it attempts to preserve the aspect for the rest. So I'm just going to set my width to 800, because as you know, these cameras now are taking these ginormous photos. Actually, let's even set this lower. Let's set my width to 600. So I should end up with a much smaller string that I'm trying to pass around, and that might help things function a little bit better. So that's another change we're going to make there. Let's turn this allow editing off just to keep things simple. So just take the picture. Well, let's leave it on. So we can kind of crop our picture if you want to. All right, so now let's try and run this thing on device. All right, so I had to switch my cameras around a bit here, but what we're going to do now is you can see it already recognizes my iPhone. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick off a build on my iPhone. And let me record on my iPhone so we can see what's going on there. All right, so let's see. It is building. There it goes. It just opened up the app on my phone. What is going on? Okay, so I have my app running on my phone now. You can scroll through and see the other stuff that we did. Let's take a picture with the camera now. We're gonna take a picture and just anything. Use photo. There's a photo from iPhone. Here is some text, and then save. So that was fast, and so there it is, and then it saved the picture. So that's what I wanted to show, and the whole idea here was to show that we have the device separate from the backend Nuxt. So we've kind of built a full stack mobile application using Nuxt, using Vue, using Prisma, using Ionic Framework. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and we will see you next time. Please, if you have any questions, leave comments below. As I said, I will post basically all these steps in a blog post, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, and bye now.